Hello and welcome back to the stars, everybody. Welcome back to Starfield, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Old Earth Assault Rifle, also known as the AK, and I'll probably just call it the AK from now on, because this definitely looks like an AK. This is an assault rifle that you can find throughout the game. It is always set to fully automatic. It should be very iconic to everybody, even if you're not into guns whatsoever. You probably know what an AK looks like, and it does function similar to AKs in other games. However, there is a few kind of oddities about this, at least in my opinion. This one you can find a little bit later into the game. You're probably not going to find it right away. There are some that you can buy outright if you do certain quests, or if you go to certain areas, as well as they're not super rare to find, but they're not super common either. I don't find a whole lot of old assault rifles just laying around. For the base stats of the AK, this one does 15 damage base. That is with a standard AK, that is not going up tiers, and this one can go all the way to an advanced tier, which is really cool. All the old Earth weapons can actually go up to advanced. There isn't any that are locked at the refined. There's only a couple of weapons that actually are locked at the refined, luckily. This is the only gun in the game that shoots the 7.62x39 round, so it is always going to kind of have a niche just because it's the only gun that can actually use those bullets. So if you have an excess of those bullets, you're going to have a gun that you can use it with. This holds 30 rounds in a base, has a decent rate of fire, although the rate of fire feels awkward to me compared to other games with AKs, and I'm not sure why. I feel like the sound is a little bit faster than it should be, but the rate of fire is less than it should be, maybe? There's something off about it compared to other games AKs where they tend to be pretty consistent. This one doesn't feel as consistent. The sound is also a little bit weird, and I wish it was a bit more punchy with the regular AK. This one has 40 meters of range like most of the rifles, so pretty good range. Has okay enough accuracy. It's not super accurate, but it's good enough. And it weighs an okay amount. Not a heavy amount, but about what you'd expect for a rifle. For the pros of this weapon, ammo is actually pretty cheap and fairly common. It's not that unusual for merchants to have over 100 rounds of 7.62x39, which is in itself kind of weird, but I guess it makes sense for the gameplay purposes, just kind of weird in the world. It does have good damage per second. That is something that is pretty good about the old assault rifle. If you can keep this on target, which isn't that hard, the AK in this game, weirdly enough, doesn't have very much recoil, even though you can never put a buttstock on it, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. And the other major pro that we just talked about is that it's the only weapon that shoots the 7.62x39. So it does have a niche regardless of when you get this in the game. The cons to this are that it doesn't do super high damage per shot, although the DPS, like we said, is pretty good, so that kind of evens out. It has kind of lower accuracy at longer ranges, so it can be a little bit difficult to control if you're just kind of spraying this at enemies at somewhat long range. And it also has limited mods. There is only a certain level of mods that you can put on this, and they don't change up the gun dramatically like in some other weapons. This is kind of a common theme with the old Earth weapons, where they can start out actually pretty good and stay relatively competitive even without mods, but once you really start getting into modded weapons, they do kind of stay more or less the same. So in my tier list, I put the old assault rifle into C tier, and I would probably still keep it into the C tier. It's like bordering on the C and B tier, where it can be a pretty decent weapon and it can do well for quite a while, but it does fall off later. But then again, it also still has the niche of only being the weapon that uses this round. So it's never really going to completely fall off because it's good enough as it is, but it's not going to heavily outcompete other weapons. It's just another weapon that you could carry around, especially if you're speccing into rifles. For a modded version of this weapon, I would recommend one of two. Either one of these kind of works, it just depends on which one you like more. The very first one is more for maximizing your damage, whereas the second one is more for maximizing your continuous rate of fire and applying pressure to enemies. For mods, I would recommend the standard barrel for this one, because the short barrel doesn't really help with this at longer ranges. For a laser, just put the laser sight on there. It's a bonus, and you should probably put it on every weapon that you can if that's the only option that you have. Otherwise, no laser is also fine. You're not going to notice a huge difference with it, but it does help a little bit. For optics, you can go with iron sights or reflex sight. I actually like the iron sights quite a bit on the AK. They're pretty clean. You can see down them pretty easily, and they don't obscure the screen very much, so I use that. But if you like the reflex sight more, then go with that one. Both are good. For a muzzle, I would recommend a suppressor on this. The suppressor just helps. It gets you more damage if you have the stealth perk. Any weapon that you can put a suppressor on will just get bonuses from that, so you might as well do it if you can. For a stock, I do like the tactical grip. This reduces the weight, it improves the ADS speed, it increases reload speed and stability. It's all around just a nice bonus. If you wanted more accuracy, then you could go with the ergo grip too. That would also work. Either one of these is fine, just so long as it's not the standard grip, since the other two are just straight upgrades to it. Then for a magazine, I would recommend armor-piercing rounds. This is generally going to be an upgrade to the weapon, especially against human targets, to where you can just do a little bit more damage to them. You could also potentially go with the tactical magazine if you'd like, just so that you have a faster reload speed. that could help as well. I like the armor-piercing rounds a bit more, but tac mag isn't bad either. Then for internals, I would go with the high-powered so we get the most damage per shot out of this. This is always set to full auto, so it can't really benefit from a semi-auto mod. I wish that was a thing. I wish you could also put a regular stock on this weapon, because I think then it would make the old assault rifle actually a pretty solid weapon. But as it stands with all of these particular mods, and it built more for damage, I would move this up a tier to like the B tier. For my second build, this is more for close and medium range, for just spraying targets down really fast. For this, I'd recommend the short barrel as our barrel mod. For laser sight, just put the regular laser sight on there since it's our only option. Optics, once again, your call whether you like iron sights or reflex sight. For a muzzle, I would recommend the suppressor again because it just gets you more damage. For the grip and stock, I would recommend the tactical grip once again. That way it lowers the weight and just gets you a bonus to the weapon. Then for a magazine, I would heavily recommend the drum magazine. This one won't do as much damage as the armor-piercing rounds to all enemies, but you will have 100 rounds in the gun, and that can actually last you a very long time, and you don't have to worry about reloading mid-fire fight at close to medium range a lot of the time, unless you're just really aggressive and move like right up next to enemies, in which case then maybe, but even then you have a pretty good chance of spraying everybody down before you need to reload. And then for an internal, I'd recommend high-powered once again, or hair trigger. Hair trigger if you want a higher rate of fire and you really want to spray things down so you get more DPS out faster, or high-powered so that you do more damage per shot. Either one of these is perfectly fine. Even high velocity could work on this, although I'd recommend that more on the other modded AK. That way you have a bit longer range and that actually affects it a little bit more. This one I would also move up to B tier. I'm not sure if I'd put it above or below the other AK. They're both good in their own ways and they're not dramatically different. It just depends on what you like more. Do you like more sustained fire or do you like more damage per shot? Or more consistent damage with the armor-piercing rounds? Either way, they're both really good. Pick whichever one you would like. Now, the AK does actually have two unique versions of it as well that you can always get. The first is called the Fury. You can get this from the Crimson Fleet. They sell this in their gun shop, and this one's actually pretty good. This one has the Furious effect on it by default, which is a really, really strong effect, especially for a fully automatic weapon. This ups your damage with every consistent hit that you put on target, up to a certain point. I believe that this is 5 rounds. So after you hit the target 5 times, that's where your damage is going to cap. But you can just keep racking up this higher amount of damage than you otherwise would, which is really nice. You just get more and more damage the more you shoot things. This gun is also set up fairly well for just spraying down targets. It's built very similar to our spray build with the AK. So for the modifications, this has a drum magazine on it already. It has high velocity rounds in it, which is kind of weird. I would change that to high powered or to hair trigger if you want to spray this a little bit more. Laser sight, which is nice. Muzzle brake, which is good, but I would switch that out for a suppressor. And then a short barrel, which is also pretty good. This can be a very strong weapon in the game and can carry you quite a bit. I would highly recommend that you grab it if you can, assuming that you don't find another AK with Furious and other effects on it, since this one does only have Furious, but even so, that is still a really good effect for a fully automatic weapon. The second unique AK is called the Gallows Reach, and this one you get during one of the main quests, or you can find it during one of the main quests. This one has a unique modification of putting poison on it. Poison effect can be good. This deals extra damage on hit, deals damage over time, and slows down targets, which is nice. That's definitely a bonus to the weapon, so this one is better than a just regular old assault rifle. This one also has a couple of different mods on it, where it's got armor-piercing rounds, which that's pretty good. It's got the ergonomic grip, so it's better for accuracy, laser sight, which is nice, muzzle brake, which once again I'd probably switch out, and then reflex sight on it. So this one's all around actually a pretty decent weapon too. And if you do the main quest quickly enough, then this one can still be pretty relevant at most points in the game, if not at all points in the game. So overall, should you be using the AK in Starfield? If you have bullets for it, yeah, absolutely. And if you're built for a rifles build, then sure, why not? There's no real downside to using this because it's not sharing ammo with anything else. So if you have excess 7.62 by 39 rounds, you might as well use it. It's not bad to carry around on you either. And if you want to take the really short, like chop down version of it, and just spray this into crowds of enemies or use it to pick off aliens, it can work pretty well. It's actually a pretty decent weapon. Nothing super flashy or super insane about this, but overall pretty good. Tell me your thoughts on the AK down in the comments below. Where would you rate it, and what are your thoughts on it? Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.